younger then, right? Not as beautiful as today, but much younger. So great to meet you guys again, or at least some of you who were in the last time that I talked in an event in Krakow. It's always fun. For me, you know, we're just walking here. I was walking here with Bart and Zoe from our team, and we were walking past the hotel where I slept for the first time that I came to Krakow. And I was looking at it, kind of was nostalgic, and said, wow, so many things happened since then. Definitely a lot of things happened at base, but I think it's amazing to see the things that happened in Krakow, right? There was, you know, late 2008, beginning of 2009. I mean, there was not this sense of community. There was not this vibe. There was not that many companies or other companies that are doing those kind of things. So it's just amazing to see what you guys have achieved in such a short period of time. So Piotr asked me to talk about my experience. Actually, he set very high expectations here. So he said it should be inspirational, I think he said, and that I'm an experienced entrepreneur. You know, what I want to do is really share with you things that I learned and try to summarize them in 8 points that hopefully give you value. A lot of them apply to entrepreneurs, but they might apply also to people who are not entrepreneurs and just day to day, maybe life even. So let's start. So 8 things I learned about startups so far. And I say so far because I really think that while Base has grown a lot since 3 years ago, the way we think about the company is that it's in its very early stages, and there's a lot for us to still to achieve. There's a lot of mistakes to be made that we have to learn from, but those are a couple that I can share more on the level of lessons learned. The first one is you have to have conviction in your ever-evolving thesis, okay? So when you start a new company, you have, hopefully, you need to have a thesis. You have to have an idea on how by starting this company, something is going to get better, right? Let's not be kind of cosmic here and say the universe has to get better, right? But something has to get better. So you're going to start this company and you have an idea of, you know, what is this company for? What is its purpose? And it's going to change over time. One of the most important things that I learned is that you have to have conviction in that thesis. You have to truly believe in it in a very thoughtful way, not just like blindly believe it, but you have to really believe in it for a couple of reasons. So first, you're going to face a lot of haters. Not really haters. It's not like people are going to hate your company, but you're going to meet with investors who are going to tell you that your idea is completely stupid. There's no chance that it'll ever happen. You're going to face some other people, maybe people you want to recruit. They tell you that they don't understand what you're doing. Maybe closer friends or family. A lot of people are going to tell you that doesn't matter what you want to build, they're going to tell you that it's wrong. You're going to face a lot of people who tell you that. And unless you have the conviction that what you're doing is right, and you have a thesis on how the world can look like, and what value you're going to create with the company that you're building, you're not going to be able to sustain through those conversations, right? You're not going to have the confidence to say, you know, that was an interesting input, right? I might think about it, but I know that I'm right. Right? Make sense? Yeah? Okay. Even more important is the idea of having the conviction for yourself. Because there's one thing about other people telling you that you're wrong, but there's another thing about a lot of mistakes that you're going to make and a lot of obstacles that you're going to face. And if you're not going to believe in what you're doing, you're not going to be able to go through those and plow through those in an effective way. Okay? So I'm talking here about self-doubt, right? This is, for anyone who missed it, it's Thomas Edison, right? And he said, you know, I failed in so many ways, but in all those ways that I failed in, I just found ways in which it doesn't work. So he knew it should work, and he knew that the failures that he has were just because he didn't figure it out yet, not necessarily because his idea or what he believes in is wrong. So to summarize it, and it's a very important point, and I'm going to use here for the first time tonight, a very nice framework that I like, the 2x2 matrix. To kind of summarize it and to bring up a very important point, you better have you better be right. So one thing that can be really, really bad is you have conviction and you're wrong, okay? So you have to think about your idea very deeply, always evaluate it, always evolve your vision, always take data in and learn from it and understand and see your idea and your company in your perspectives. So this is the 2x2 matrix. If your conviction and right, world domination, right? If your conviction are wrong or no conviction are right, that's not too good. And if you didn't have conviction and you're wrong, that's actually a good thing. It's better than having a conviction and being wrong. There's a flip side to that that's very, very interesting. If you build a company and the company is fairly successful, or hopefully very successful, you're gonna have people who are gonna try and buy your company, right? So we had such instance, we had a couple of such instances, and in one of them specifically, the number was very, very big, right? And if you don't have conviction in the idea, the moment you're gonna hear the number, this is what you're gonna see, okay? Right? And if you don't know what you're gonna do with the company or why you wanna build the company, any number is gonna look right. Any number is gonna look great. You say, oh wow, I'm gonna get rich, right? Which is valid and legit, right? But if you have a larger plan, a master plan on what you're gonna do with the company, there shouldn't be a way really, a reason or why to sell the company, right? If you know what you're doing, right? And you really believe in it. So that's the flip side of it. On to the next one. That's also interesting. Anything that's worth doing is very, very hard, right? The opposite of that is if something is very easy, right, it's unlikely to be very valuable, okay? Because again, remember, when you build a company and you start something new, you want to create value. You want to build value for certain people, okay? And if it's really going to be, or if you're really going to create a lot of value, you have to put a lot of work behind it, because all the easy ideas are taken, right? Even the companies that you think about that are growing so fast, or you heard about them and they're kind of explosive growth, have gone through some really, really shitty times and a lot of almost near-death experiences, right? If you saw the movie, the kind of hype movie Social Network, right? You can see the amount of craziness that happened in Facebook, right? It started in 2004. So things are harder, and if something is hard, that's a good sign, okay? That's a great sign. If something is super easy, right, that's probably not going to create a lot of value. By the way, when we started the company and launched the first version, I was sure we're just going to put the website out there, everybody is going to flock, start using the application, pay us a lot of money, and all the value would be unlocked overnight, right? It was slightly different, okay, to say the least. So again, if it's hard and valuable, world domination. If it's hard and not valuable, that's really bad, right? Easy and valuable, no such thing, like unicorns. And if it's easy and not valuable, it's just boring, okay? Okay, another point that is a big, really big deal for us, and it's a constant struggle, right? And that's the idea of focus, right? I don't think that, I mean, focus is this kind of word that's very elusive, because everyone is completely convinced that they're focused, right? Even if they know that sometimes they're distracted, they think that in the higher sense of what to be focused, they're generally they're focused, right? You ask somebody, you say you're focused? Yeah, I'm focused, right? But I think it's really a misunderstood word. I think that people, not everyone, like including myself, I did not appreciate what being focused means. And focused has two levels to it, right? It's focused as a group of people working together on an idea, right? And making sure that you're not wasting time on stupid things, on bullshit, on stuff that doesn't really contribute to the thing that you're trying to build. And there's focus on the micro level, right? Yourself, day to day, you know, in our case, in front of a computer doing the work. So, you know, it's very clear that, or something that's known, okay, you have to say no to things, right? But actually the definition that I really like is it's really easy to say no to things that you know that you don't want to do, right? I think Johnny Ive from Apple said that, right? We all say no all the time, but we actually lie to ourselves because we say no to things that we don't want to do regardless. It's extremely hard to say no to things that you really, 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 really want to do, and you actually think that they're a great idea. There's only one problem, you're working on this other thing that's more important now, right? And I'm sure that if you think about it, you find out that you face that all the time. You always have that, oh, this is like great idea, and you want to work on it, right? This is when you're really tested, right? If you can say no to that other thing. And again, that's on the macro level as a company. You know, the amount of ideas that we're going to have and the amount of things that come your way every day are just enormous, right? And you have to stay the course, right? I'll give you an example. We had this partner in Australia, the biggest telecommunication company in Australia, and they tell us, oh, we want to partner with you, and we'll resell you in Australia, and you make you huge in Australia, and the market here is so big, and it sounds so good, right? You're like, wow, I'm going to be huge in Australia, right? Kind of like Australians. It's going to be amazing, right? But then you think about what it's actually going to take, because it doesn't really, it's not like working like that. It's not that like, okay, just sign here and boom, you're massive in Australia. Oh, you have to negotiate the contract and how they're going to distribute you, and you have to fly there and you have to meet them. And while you're doing that, you're not doing all the other things, right? And that takes a lot to say no to something that looks like a great opportunity, right? It's very easy if somebody writes to you and say, hey, I work in that city, wherever, and I have 2 customers here, and let's partner, and you know, I need 2 months of your time, right? It's easy to say no to that, right? So that's about saying no, and you have to say no to things that you actually think might be good. On the micro level, you get it? On the micro level, it's just unbelievable the amount of noise that's out there, right? And again, I think it's a constant struggle for every person, especially a lot of people who use social media. It's just a constant noise in the background that doesn't allow you to focus on what you want to do, right? 2 days ago, as an example, I deleted the Facebook app from my mobile phone, and I'm such a better person now. No, but in all seriousness, there's a lot of noise out there, and you know, every time that you answer to that other stuff, or you got the tweet, or you saw the tweet, or somebody mentioned you on Instagram, wherever, Snapchat, so the Snapchat is big now in Krakow, you're not doing something else. And it's fine as long as you consciously understand that and choose to do so. The problem is that most of the time this is not the case, right? So if you think about that, all focus comes to is really the idea of time and how limited time is. Boom. Yes. And how limited time is, and just think about it and you ask yourself, okay, as a group of people, how focused we are. Are we working on the right things? How much of the things that we're working on are the wrong things, right? And then each one of us individually, how focused are we in trying to move things forward in making things happen? And you understand that maybe when you multiply those together, if you think about them as percentages, maybe you're running at 20% the level of effectiveness that you can, right? So I think focus is such an important thing, and I see it again and again. There's some people that I met, and I really admire the ability to just they just don't care, right? They don't care about any other thing. They're so entrenched and so into what they do that nothing else matters, right? There's this Russian mathematician, I don't know if you know the guy, who's like 45 years, that's an extreme case, I'm not advocating for that, but he's like 45 years old, he lives with his mom, right? He doesn't have a phone, doesn't have anything. You heard about this guy? You know who I'm talking about? The guy's a genius. Like, he solved one of the 7 unsolved or 8 unsolved problems in mathematics, right? That's what he does. He actually solved it, and it took folks at MIT 3 years to prove that his solution was right. Like a group of mathematicians, right? But he's just sitting in his room and he's doing that stuff, right? So that's kind of extreme case, right? That's kind of not having a life, right? But you need to have this intense level of focus in order to succeed. Woo. Whoa. No. Spoiler. No. Someone here is fucking with me. Okay. The ability, talking about that mathematician and the idea of focus, right? The ability to sit down and think is a competitive advantage, right? And you're like, what do you mean? Like, everybody thinks, right? I think, yeah, you think, right? Well, I mean, I think it's kind of a lost art, right? And, you know, I challenge sometimes people who join our company in the first conversation that I have with them, I challenge them to sit down, choose a topic or a problem, and think about it for 30 minutes. Not more than that. But they cannot think about anything else. They just have to think about just this problem. And the reality is it's extremely hard. I challenge you, try to do it. Your mind will immediately wander and you'll fight it and you want to get it back and you wander again and you want to try and get it back because we kind of lost it, right? Because we have all those distractions. Our mind is not used to focus on one thing. But thinking is so valuable. I know it sounds like, well, it makes sense, right? But I think you should purposefully practice it, purposefully shut the door and sit down for 2 hours and think about the problem in a very thoughtful way, in a very organized way. And I think the results from that are amazing. And a lot of time we get lazy and we choose the first answer that comes to mind, or we saw this other company doing something and we say, wow, if they did it and it succeeded for them, it probably will succeed for us, which is not true, right? Because they had their own context and their own company and their own people and their own competition and so forth. So, yeah, so in today's version or today's part of cheesy quotes, we have a quote here from Albert Einstein, right? If I'd work for an hour, I'd have 2 hours to solve a problem. I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem, right? And really deeply understanding the problem. What? Yeah. In Bayes, we have the thing that we call no to weed. Okay, kind of weird, like no to weed. What's wrong with weed? Weed is great. But for us, weed is what everybody else does, right? Again, going against the concept of like, oh, those other companies did X, so if I'll do X, I'll probably be as successful as the other companies, right? It doesn't work this way. Especially if you want to do something that's special, especially if you want to build something that's unique, especially if you want to break through. If you just do what everybody else does, you're going to get, average results, right? Numbers are your friends, but are also very dangerous. So, at the end of the day, talking about having that conviction and knowing what you want to do, right? You always form a vision of reality. And we all do, and I think entrepreneurs in a very kind of more specific way tend to be overly optimistic, right? And the one great thing about numbers, right, is that they tell you the truth, right? So what I suggest for always tell entrepreneurs, like really understand kind of what numbers or what metrics, what things that you can kind of collect and analyze that can describe the reality. Regardless of what you're telling yourself and how you're pumping yourself, oh, we're doing amazingly well, eventually there's a number, right? For companies, business companies, right, revenue is such a number, right? If you run a company for 5 years, you're like, oh my goodness, we're amazing, and you have no revenue, kind of a problem, right? Not saying that it's impossible. There's some extreme cases, but kind of a problem, right? So I'm talking about, in large, about the concept of like knowing what numbers are important for you, knowing what are the metrics, what drives your business. Different companies have different things. By the way, again, it's not only for companies, it's just day to day, you're working on something, you're working on a project, right? How do you know if the work that you've done is great or not? In an objective way, right? There's, of course, the subjective way of what you think about it, and obviously you think that the work you've done is awesome, right? But an objective way, you want to measure it, and you want to look at it, and you want to analyze it and understand what do the numbers tell you. And that's the tricky part here in the analysis part, right? I'll be careful now. Yeah? No? Ooh. So, that's a kind of simplified version of how to do it, right? You have to have a thesis. By the way, super important, right? If you just start measuring something and you get a number out of it, but you didn't have an idea of why you're measuring it and what the number you expect to see, any number will look good, right? But if you have a thesis, okay, if I do this change and I measure it, this is what I expect to see because blah, 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 and you have a thesis, and then you measure and you analyze it, you can really come to an amazing conclusions. And I can see that getting better and better and better at that makes a big impact on making better decisions, knowing exactly what is happening, understanding reality in a better way. But as I mentioned, numbers can be very dangerous if you analyze them the wrong way. There is actually such book on Amazon, How to Lie with Statistics. And yes, there's the other one. Statistics show that teen pregnancy drops significantly after age 25, right? So you have to be very careful when you look at the numbers, right? And understand what they mean, understand what drives them, what's behind them, because the worst thing that can happen to you, right, is to measure something, not analyze it in the right way, and make the wrong decision because of it. You'd rather not measure it, right? Makes sense? Right? Measure, wrong analysis, not good. Okay? If you don't measure, at least nothing happened. But if you measure and you made the wrong analysis, it's not good. I'll get to that actually in a second when I talk about, the idea of incrementalism, right? So the idea of incrementalism is like, how can I improve that by a little, and how can I improve that by a little? And sometimes it's an effective way, right, to run things. So it's not like a complete veto here, like never do like incremental stuff. But progress typically doesn't come from incremental stuff. So big progress in the company, big progress with your idea is going to come from having a big, bold idea that changes things, right? For us, there have been a couple of those, or 3 or 4 of those that really changed the game for us, right? In a very big way, right? And then you optimize on those, right? So there's the idea, which is very simple, I think, to understand. If you keep optimizing and you keep optimizing, you're running around the local maximum, right? And you get to the top of that local maximum, i.e., and let me try to give maybe a very tangible example from web in the general and web design, web development. There's the concept of A/B testing. Who knows what A/B testing is? Right? Yeah? Okay. No? Making fun here of Bart. A/B testing is pretty much, because I saw some people maybe are not familiar with the concept. A/B testing is, let's say you have a certain version of your homepage and you want to see how people react to that homepage. What you can do, you can launch a second version of the homepage. You can take the people that are visiting your website, split them, half of them show them one version, the other half show the other version, and see which version is working better, right? It's like A/B testing in 4 sentences. Here's the problem with A/B testing, that you're always going to be optimizing around a local maximum, right? And what really matters is that sometimes, and again, sometimes it's effective and you can do some work with it and kind of improve and optimize. But sometimes, right, actually a better idea, we can design the page in a completely different way. It's going to completely change the results, right? And it also connects to what I talked about before and how you analyze the results, because this is a mistake that I see time and time again, where people are not measuring the full impact of the change. So they measure only how many people clicked on that button, and the fact that version B did better than version A doesn't mean anything, right? Because version B could have a text on the button that says, if you're not going to click this button, your computer will explode, right? And a lot of people are going to click that button, right? So you really have to think through, and you have to think about how can you make big moves that are bold, but they're not really risky, because if you thought them through, they shouldn't be really risky. Oh, another spoiler. Yeah, an example, Nokia, right? This is all the phones that Nokia had from 2000 to 2007, right? This is incrementalism. Let's add a button here. Let's remove a button from there. Let's add an inch to the screen. And now, and this, right? This is like, okay, that's a whole new concept of another phone. So again, sometimes the idea of incrementalism can be effective when you kind of try to optimize on something that already worked, right? But you have to remember that if you want to move the things in a meaningful way, you have to make a big move, right? Make sense? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. You cannot compromise on the people who are on the journey with you. Yeah, people are important and all that, right? We've heard that before. Well, what can I tell you? It's true, okay? The people who you work with and day in and day out are going to make a big impact on the success for everyone who is a part of the journey, right? And apart from, of course, you want to work with smart people, and of course that you want to work with, you know, good people and all that stuff. But I think more importantly is to understand you want to work with people that you share a certain set of values, right? You want to work with people that think, you know, that have similar thinking to yours. And sometimes, you know, there might be somebody who's super smart, but is just not a good fit, and that is fine. And you have to learn to let go. You have to learn to say, you know, this person is great and they're smart, but, you know, maybe they're not kind of a good fit to the group that we're building here, right? And building that group and investing in building that group and thinking about how to create that group and the type of people that you want to have with you is super important, right? There's, of course, the extreme case of the PayPal guys. It's called the PayPal Mafia, which is just scary to see the people who were in that company, right? Anyone knows that? Yeah? Who knows that? Who ever seen that? Yeah? Great. So 70% don't know that. So it was not useless. PayPal, right, was, you know, everybody heard about PayPal. Those are the people who worked at PayPal. They went on to start YouTube and Yelp and Tesla and LinkedIn. And, well, they invested in Facebook and they worked at Square and worked at Sequoia, which is a VC firm that's very big. It's just amazing to see of how one group of people, right, eventually became, you know, spun up so many other companies, right? But it was this core of amazing people that work together, okay? And I think that Piotr said something about it that was very interesting about the growth of Krakow. The success of Krakow will come from a lot of great people going together on a couple of journeys, building big companies, then breaking apart, starting new companies, right? This is how Silicon Valley was started. Silicon Valley started with just one company that was really great, right? And from those companies, there were like 6 other companies that were created because people who worked there understood how to build companies and had the shared values on how to build companies and started other companies and so on and so forth until today, obviously, you have this like massive success that's happening there and so many successful companies. This is how you start. Again, it's very important in the micro level within your company, but on the macro level, in a city level, this is how you create a scene within a city, not necessarily tech, any scene. So the last one is really kind of the idea of why are you here? And I think that that's trying to sum it up and go back to the first point of like thinking and why you're doing what you're doing. Eventually, the value you create, you want to connect with it, right? Not everybody has to connect with it, but at least you have to connect with it. And you have to understand why you're doing, because otherwise you not have the conviction that I mentioned in the beginning, right? For us, is the understanding that there are at least 30 million, probably 50, 60 million that are working with really crappy, outdated software that makes them really sad every day, day in and day out, right? And we want to change it, right? And we think it's a worthy mission, right? For you, it might be something else, right? But you have to think about like, what is this meaningful impact that you can make? What is the meaningful thing? Because otherwise, if it's not going to be meaningful, you're going to give up along the way. Because it's like, nah, you know what? Maybe that's not really interesting. Maybe that's not really useful. Maybe that's not really valuable. Make sense? Thank you.